Ah, well, it happened. With all of my lack of knife safety, I managed to cut off my fingers. So now I'm going to have to figure out how to do things with 2 digits. Oh, no, 1 digit now. Welcome to my improv video. This one's going to be a pretty straightforward little fun one. They're all fun, let's be honest. If you're not here for fun, then what the heck are you here to begin with at all? So this is just to make prop fingers using, or decently realistic. These ones I painted for fun, and they could be painted a little bit better. I could go get the airbrush and blah, 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 blah. But anyways, these are made out of sculpy. Oh, look at that. My resin's not completely dry. These are just made out of sculpy with using a mold made out of my own finger. So technically, in a roundabout way, I did cut off my own finger. And like I said, the paint on this could be a little bit better. I wanted a pale look on this. And this here is just the same type of finger that I did before, but I poured resin, colored resin on it after it's done. Oh, speaking of which, Beef Chicken Industries, you see this? This has got about 30% acrylic paint in it, and that's what I used to dye it. So no, you don't need specific dyes. Anyways, onwards with the video. This is quick and easy, and hopefully you can keep up. Okay, so onwards and upwards. Get your Sculpey out, get it to about 3/4 of an inch, to give or take, and you want some extra ready to go that's been worked. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to be making the mold, and this is my first one. This was for the index finger that I made, and it's a bit rough, and my lines didn't line up perfectly, and you see it scorched in the oven a bit, which I'm still not sure if the timing was right on it. But anyways, you're going to be making a 2-part mold that is a bit rough because it's sculpy. You know, it doesn't behave very well. Now, once you get your finger into here, you've got to get your finger out of here. And if you want to, you can use a knife and cut your finger out, but I wouldn't suggest that because that is crazy and you may hurt yourself. And what I do is I came up with a really cool way of splitting out the mold using string. So if you look here, this is actually high-test fishing line. I use this stuff for everything because it's almost invincible. And I took a little bit of liquid latex and I glued the line to the side of my finger. So you see I can move my finger around and it's still there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take this, we're going to bias to one edge of this Sculpey. I'm going to try keeping in camera here, but I have to push down on this pretty hard. So now once I'm there, you push your finger hard down into the Sculpey. Ouch! Yeah, that is a very bad angle. 1 second here. There we go. So I'm going to move the camera just slightly so you can see what's going on here. So now I'm going to take the other side. I'm going to wrap it over. You don't want your joint to be on the top. So what you do is you take that, you push it over, and really push in this seam because it can cause problems on the front and the side. We're going to go back and we're going to clean this up a bit after we're done. Pull in the sides because we want to have a decent amount of build-up here. Make sure my string didn't get absorbed into the actual Sculpey itself. Now, using the extra, you're going to be working one-handed here if you don't have any help. And you just want to build up the top of this so it has a bit more strength and it's a bit more flat. I'm going to clean this up before I'm done here, because when you're done here, you want this top side to lie flat when it goes in the oven, because if not, you can end up with distortions like I did on the first one. It doesn't have to be beautifully clean, but you know, you can sit here and you can muck and you can work as hard as you want to get this mold completely around your finger beautifully, and you can feel it when it goes in. It's really a tight fit, which is great. So now I know where my finger is, so I'm just going to clean off the front of that. Wouldn't that be hilarious, cutting off the tip of my finger there? I'm just going to square up my mold. And if you don't know where your finger is, don't do this. You know, have some self-responsibility on what you're doing. And now this is the tough part, because what I want to do is I want to have the top of this flat, so when it bakes, it'll bake beautifully flat. And did I cut towards myself? Yes, but come on. I'm not exactly cutting stuff that causes the knife to jump. But I'm sure somebody will complain. Anyways, so there we go. So now here's the fun trick. Those strings that I attached, hopefully you can see it here, you can. What you do is you pull those strings. And what it does is it cuts the mold exactly, perfectly, and beautifully. So now we're going to lift ever so gently without flexing the mold too much. And there we go. We have my thumb completely sculpted. Should you key this mold? No, because the way it works is we're just using this as a template and looking to see if I got really good detail in my thumb. I did. It looks really good. You know, my thumbnails got really good detail. I've got everything turned out really good here. I've got no lips, which are going to cause problems. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to square off this back. Flex my mold a little bit, but that's okay. Square off this back. And now I'm going to go and bake this mold. So it'll be ready to go and we'll be back. Oh, actually, I don't want to waste Sculpey. So, you know, you take off the material that you don't need, but be gentle. You don't want to flex your mold too much. You can have a bit of flex. You're going to have some cleanup regardless. This process is not perfect, but it works very well for making believable props quickly without, you know, spending $10 to $15 per silicone finger, which will always look better than this, but this will work. Anyways, I'll be back after I bake this and we'll go over sculpting the actual, like, how do you pull the mold from this? So I'll be back. We are back, and happens to be one day later. So what I did yesterday is we got the mold built and then I went and baked it. When I baked this mold, the top still shrank. I tried hard to stop it not doing this, but it did. That's okay. All I did is when it was cooling off, I put a weight on top of it to force that gap closed. And this is the end result. Just two little tiny things. You can use glue to attach the string to your finger if you don't have latex. I should have mentioned that before. And number two, when you finish this off, take your finger and rub your thumbprint off. This stuff takes impression perfectly, and I think the last thing you really want to do is have an example of your finger running around perfect to your thumbprint. Anyway, so now that we've got this baked, you want to get Sculpey. That looks horrible. And what I find is best here is this is not, it's never a perfect art here. This is not, you're not going to end up with a perfect output each time here. This takes a little bit of finessing. So I'm just going to go through that and show you how we go about doing that. So what you do is you want to get your piece of Sculpey here with enough thickness. And what I do is I actually compare it to my thumb. You know, that's what I'm going to be putting in. And then you take that, and on the top side where you want the detail more so, you just take that and you push it in as hard as you can. And as you do that, you want the top, you're going to triangle off the top just a little bit, like so. Now, this is where you're going to end up with a bit of flare when you're all finished. So start at the back and put your new mold down. So you line that up, and then you push down from the front to the back. And what's going to happen is you're going to slowly displace all of that Sculpey out along the line of your actual mold. Now, we're going to open that up. We're going to see how that turned out. See, we got a little tiny bit of flash, and, you know, overall, this one's a pretty good pull. And just like that, you pull it out, and you have a really good example of your mold. Then what I do is I quickly just take, you can use a knife for this. I just prefer this tool, just to scrape off that little bit of flare or flash that you may get. And then once it's gone, just be gentle on the top, because that's where you see all your detail. And then just use your finger to flatten this all down. Hopefully I can do it. I keep on blocking the camera with my finger, or with my hand, so I'm trying to get better at that. And just like that, you have a pretty believable example of a thumb. Now this is where the fun using this technique is fantastic, because you can you can really make each of your, oh look, I found my magnet. You can make each of your thumbs look completely different. So what I like to do now, let me make sure we're in the screen here. So we take this and you slice it. And just like that, you now have the start of your prop. Now, of course, be gentle. When you hold it near the bottom so any of the damage you do to it won't be on this top texture, because that's where you want to do it. Now, what I like to do is, because you can sculpt these as many times as you want, I like to take this and then you can dig into this back side here. And I'll show you some examples after I'm done of what this looks like when you're all finished. You know, you can go as little or as much detail as you want back here. If you want it to be a ragged cut, you can do that. But I find that just going back here, and if at very worst, you just mix up this back part here to make it look horrible. As my wife said, you see, got a little bit of a fingerprint there, but that's okay. It's going to add to the character of the actual prop. Now, because this is sculpy, we can really have some fun now, because you can go like this, and you can actually have a secondary split, and you can pull that open to give the actual look of the prop more character. And you know, this is the one thing with silicone molds, of course, you pull them and each one's going to look similar, and the only way to differentiate them is by painting them. With using this technique and a bit of je ne sais quoi, or flair, you can really go and make these props into something just horrendous. Not horrendous, but really gory. So you can see now, with that little bit of work, this is a ghastly looking prop. And it really is, you know, and you can just open it up like that just to give it some character. You don't want the cut to be clean. But there you go, you can see. And now the only other thing you can do is, if you want to, you can go through and you can just clean up some of these lines very gently if they did not pull properly. And once you've done this, you can move on to the next one, or as how many props as you want to make. So there we go. That is literally how you're going to go and pull this thumb as a prop. I'll give you some examples of some of the other ones that I've done, just so you can have an idea of where to go. This was pulled from the other finger mold. Hopefully it gets decent lighting here. It's a bit bright here, but that's okay. And then these are the thumbs that I pulled from the mold as well, and did a bit of work on the back of them. You can see they're pretty fun. It's literally, use your imagination. Once you get going on this, you can make a lot of props very quickly. And what is really nice is they can all end up different from each other. You know, each one is going to be a different monster, and you can do a lot from a single mold at this point. So I'm going to move this guy off to the side. I'm going to move this one off to the side. I'm just going to go over a very quick example on how to get this thing painted now. You don't have to go overboard, and there's probably somebody out there who's going to do a lot better job of painting this than I am. I should be grabbing out the airbrush, but I want to make this accessible so the more people can do this. So I'm just grabbing Portrait Pink, which is, you know, nothing special. It's just a flesh-colored acrylic and a paintbrush. And what we're going to do is we're just going to quickly put a base coat on this finger. You want to keep it light because you don't want to lose your details. And you might end up having to put 2 coats on this to get to the level of pink that you need, but I'm just going to go through. I'm going to quickly put on the paint, and then I'll be back to describe how to do the actual second parts of this. Oh, and don't feel you're limited to the colors that I'm using. This is, you can make these into zombie fingers. They can make it into demon fingers. It's just a matter of this point, your paint job. So listen to me. Have fun, because that's what I say a lot. You know, and what's really nice is the Sculpey base being white already gives this thing a fantastic natural look. You don't have to do a lot to get these things to where you need them. And you can color quickly, you can paint quickly, you can do a tiny bit of wash on these to get the color just where you want it. And you're done. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put that down. Now I'm going to show you what I usually do on the back. I take a little bit of red. Hopefully this is on the camera. It is good. Take a little bit of red. Actually, a bit more red because the black is very strong and it will offset the color pretty quickly. And then a little bit of black. A little bit. Oh, that's almost too much. I'm going to have to be gentle with that. I'm going to split off some of that black right now and get it away from my mix. Okay. So you mix the red and the black. I may have to do a bit more here, but this looks pretty good. And, oh yeah, definitely going to need a bit more red in there. That's the way it works. And if you have a pre-mixed color, even better. You know, you're not mucking around with this. So you get this to, you don't even have to mix it fully. Like, see how, hopefully you can see that on the camera. It's got a little bit of a swirl texture to it. So I'm going to grab a brush here. What would be a good one? That one looks good. Going to grab my freshly painted item here. And then on this back side, you go in there and you fill in all of the stuff you missed with the flesh color. You know, if you want to do bone in here, you can. You can, this is honestly your imagination. Have fun. Go crazy. And the more fun you have, the more grisly these props end up looking. And I want to put across just how easy these things are to make and how quickly you can do a whole setup of these sculpy props and have them just look amazing in a haunt, in almost anything, because they really do come together very quickly. And they look really good. And I'm personally, I'm really happy with how this turned out because you can just go nuts. And now to finish it up, I'm not going to do the wash on it. You can do that after. And I'll just give you an example with the other one, how I go about this. Take a bit of this melamine sponge or a regular sponge. I just like, once again, I like melamine sponges because of the fine texture on it. And we're going to bring this down to almost nothing. And then I'm just going to touch up around the actual wound area. And you can do a bit up if you want to. I'm going to get a bit more and do it a bit harder at the back here. And I'm going to do the side on the underside here. Okay. And once you do a wash, you can see how good that looks. Oh, one last thing, and I'm going to, you know, because a lot of these props that I build, I'm doing them as I build them. So, oh man, some of them I look back at my videos going, holy, you should have explained that better, Samhain. So take a tiny bit of black and just, this should be dry when I do this part, but you can get away with it being wet. And I find by putting a bit of black in there, it just adds to the look and feel of the actual wound being like an open, ugly, because blood when it dries goes pretty much black. And that's what you want to keep in mind. You don't want brilliant colors if you want it to be believable. And the final step is I don't have any water here, so I can't really do a wash. All I'll do is I'll use a toothpick and I'll run a little bit of wash just over here and underneath the fingernail to give it that darkness. Not a lot. And if you want to, you can actually go and, because if you see a hand, the fingernail has got the white cuticle. So if you want to, you can go grab a little bit of, when I did this, I like this unbleached titanium. It was just such a horrible, ugly color. I love this color. It's ugly, and that's why I'm going to choose it. I need a decent brush for that one. A little bit harder of a bristle, so I can do a bit more. So at the back here, you just pretty much pick where the cuticle will go and put in the line. If you airbrush this, it would look even better. But you don't need a lot to make it look that little bit more realistic. And in reality, this finger has been cut off, so it's lost blood flow, it's lost integrity. So, you know, you have to keep it in mind of what it may look like if you actually had a severed finger. Now, what I do as a final step here, and I'm going to go over to my final ones. Being bad, I don't have water here to wash off my brushes, so I got to be quick here now. Which is good for you. You don't have to listen to me talk for an hour. So here, we're going to go over the finished part of how I went about going on these to finish them up. Now, what I really like to do is, you can see this one here, how it's shiny and glossy on the back. So it looks like it's wet. It's ugly, you know. I took a bit of 2-part epoxy, like resin, mixed it up, put a bit of, actually almost that color into it, and made it into the dip. And I just use a toothpick to put it onto there. And up here you can see, this one is experimenting a bit. This almost has too much color on it, but you can see here the brown. Next time I'll do that in red, which I'm going to do on this thumb here. I'm going to do it in a little bit of a pink so it doesn't look like the finger's dirty, because it, you know, it breaks the immersion of it a little bit. But you can see the same technique here. I used the brush to finish it off. And when you're done, you end up with a very gory looking simple prop. And this being sculpy, it can be drilled, it can be nailed. It's tough, you know. It's not like this thing is going to break. Now here is an example of the finger sitting in a pile of blood. When you're doing blood, don't make it red. Make it brownish, make it reddish, deep colored, because then it looks like it's been sitting around for a while. And once again, you don't want to break realism. The more chance you have to have somebody believe it, it's amazing the human's ability to dismiss things as fake when you make it almost too vivid. So that's why when I do blood, you see that is almost like an ugly brown. That's the way I like it, because it looks like it's been sitting around for a bit. So once again, epoxy on the back, paint it up. You can see this finger, I did a hole. The other thing that I did is I went and snuck in my wife's nail polish. She had a matte coat, not a full matte coat, but a semi-gloss. I put that on the fingernail. And you can see that it ends up with just that little bit of shine, which leads to, once again, more believing. Then what I did is I mixed up some 2-part epoxy, the resin that I used for the back of the fingers. I'm like, oh, I had extra. So I dumped it on tin foil and then put this whole thing on, let it dry a bit. Now I've got a very movable prop that looks, in my books, fantastic. So I'm going to leave it here. I don't need to talk until the end of time. I would love to see somebody do some of these things. I'm not sure how YouTube is going to react to the thumbnail that I'm going to come up with this, because this looks horrible. Like, if I put this on as the thumbnail, I don't know how it's going to be received. So I would love to have some people show me what they build here. And please do it. It's so simple. And all this, honestly, it's so cheap and repeatable and modifiable. You will find that if you do this, these molds will never fall out of use. And even my ugly, longer one. So anyways, thanks so much for tuning in. I look forward to doing the next video. Remember to like, share, subscribe, send it to your cat, your dog, your parrot, your goldfish, and Elvis. The king is not dead. Have a good one all.